All right, I think we're good to go. I haven't heard negatively from Jennifer, so she's running control. You're good. Okay, awesome. Welcome. My name is Cyndi Bolduc. I'm the Outfitter Guide Program Coordinator for the Oregon State Marine Board. And currently 5:03 on Wednesday, August 14th, 2024, and the Guide Advisory Committee is now called to order. This is a public meeting, but the committee will not be requesting or receiving any public comment or testimony on any item of today's agenda. The Guide Advisory Committee does not have authority to make rules or statutory changes to Marine Board administration. Therefore, no public comment will be heard by the committee. If you wish to raise items for discussion, please contact one of the committee members or the agency contact Jennifer Cooper. So welcome, everybody. Let me just take a quick roll, and then we'll introduce our newest member. Do we have Cliff Agos? Cody Cole? I think Cody said he'd be joining us, so hopefully he'll join later. Bill Monroe Jr.
Oh,
Is that you, Bill?
hey, Cyndi, I'm on. Oh, hi, Cyndi. I'm sorry about that. I'm on the call because I got like 15 links for the Microsoft link live event, and I don't have the correct link. So I'll just pull off here. And
You're fine, Bill.
Okay,
we
good.
We can hear you. Good.
Thank you so much.
Jason Schultz.
I'm here, Cyndi. Thank you.
Hi, Jason. Yes.
Hi.
Mia Shepard. Jeff Keatley. I think I see you, Jeff. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Jeff Miller. I don't know. I thought you said Grant anyway.
No, I said Jeff Keatley. I know we've got two Jeffs, so sorry.
No, this is Jeff Miller. That's all right.
Hi, Jeff. I will mark you down as here.
Thank you.
Corey Marr. Do not think he was going to make it. Grant Sheely.
Here.
Hi, Grant. Megan Selvig.
Yep, I'm here.
Hi, Megan. Jack Craven. I don't think Jack was off the water yet today, so. Val Early.
Here.
Hi, Val. Glad you could join us. Brian Paulson is here.
Present by video.
And Lieutenant Clint Galusha.
I'm here.
You're muted, Clint, but I can see your smiling face.
No.
Okay, and then I'd like to introduce Dana Burwell. Hi, Dana.
Hey, nice to be here.
Nice to have you. Dana is our newest member. He's the representative for the Mackenzie River Guides Association, so we're glad to have that representation. Dana, I've heard a little bit about your background, but I'd love it if you could give a little short introduction to everybody and tell us about yourself.
My wife and I started guiding on the Mackenzie back in the late 80s, and we guided there for a number of years. We're both retired now, but I'm staying active in the organization as a past president and director. I've been a director for over 20 years now. So, and I'm running the life jacket program for the guides and working on conservation and issues for them. So very interested in maintaining our guide association. We have one of the longest organizations still in existence, I think, in America, until somebody proved me wrong. We started in 1931, and we have about 120 members now. Most of them or more than half of them are guides. We mostly do raft and drift boat fishing on the Mackenzie, but most of our guides also go to Idaho and the Rogue River and move around during the coastal rivers during the winter time too. So we're spread all over the state and Idaho and Washington.
That's fantastic. We're happy to have you aboard and appreciate your point of view. I've been notified that we have a couple of people that have microphone difficulties. I have nothing to do with it. Jennifer, do you know? Let's see. I'm looking at audio settings. Clint, you might be unmuted now. No, okay. And Jeff Keatley, yours says mute. Are you? Hi, Jeff. I think you've maybe muted yours. Oh, Jennifer says she's changed your permission, so you should be able to unmute yourself.
Well, how exciting. Hi, everybody.
There you are. Hi, Jeff. Okay. Oh, Clint, I saw the.
Now, Cyndi.
There you are. Okay, good. You're just going to speak up, either that or you're really low. Okay. All right, let's get moving. I would like to make this a short and sweet meeting for all of us. Did everybody have a chance to read over the minutes of the last meeting and have any comment or need changes? All right, if no one speaks up, then I will consider them accepted unanimously. So, cool. All right. As far as renewals go, this is my sweet period because it's quiet. Although I'm just rolling into the hunt tag program certification, so that puts my focus on a completely different area of the guides. But currently we have 1527 currently registered outfitter guides. So far from 2023, we have 202 that have not renewed, and newbies this year, so enrolled, registered for the first time, we have 157. So we are not back up to 2023's number yet, so we're still under that. As far as guide employees, so individually registered employees who are registered outfitter guides, we have 196. So these are typically the fishing guides, deckhands, or say rafting guides who have employees who work with fishing in their trips, on their trips. And we have charter boats. We are up to 70 this year. We have a new one on the Snake River. So we broke that 70 mark. So any questions on just renewals this year? Or the year as a whole has gone pretty smoothly. And we've put most of you don't know the hunt tag program, but we offer the enrollment in the special small program for hunting guides, and they're able to draw tags for non-resident hunters. And we were able to put their application online now on the online store, so it's making that a lot easier for me this year as well. So we're rocking and rolling with that one. All right, enforcement update. We are lucky to have Acting Lieutenant Clint Galusha here. Our usual liaison, Senior Trooper Joe Tizo is off for the week, so Clint gets to fill in for him.
Yeah, no worries. Something I used to do, and I'll probably continue to do again after this working out of class is done. So for those who don't know me, I'm Clint Galusha. I've been with the state police for 16 years and lucky enough to work in our special investigations unit for these last 6, with 3 being as a sergeant. So we have one contracted position with the Oregon State Marine Board for guides and outfitters. And so we get a lot of these direct tips, through Cyndi to the Oregon State Police, and they get kind of filtered down to our unit. And then we also work with our field troopers as well, who have some general funding from the Marine Board, and we also work some of the guide cases through that. It's been a very busy last, I'd say 4 or 5 months. A lot of various complaints coming in, mostly illegal guiding, guiding without a license, or licensed guides doing illegal acts while guiding, or a lot of the complaints. Buoy 10's going on right now, so that always tends to draw a few illegal guides due to just the chaotic nature of the area, there being both Washington and Oregon access, and just the sheer number of fish involved. So we end up getting quite a few calls to the Buoy 10 fishery. Ethics complaints, we get various ethics complaints from time to time. Sometimes it's guide to guide, sometimes it's individuals complaining about a trip they were on with a guide, complaining of alcohol usage or drugs, suspected drugs, stealing clients, what have you. We investigate some of those. We work with the Coast Guard closely on a lot of the allegations of drug use and alcohol usage. And we've also been getting, like Cyndi said, with the guide outfitter tags, been getting a few more inquiries and cases of that nature. Just say to the guides, just make sure that you're getting the permits for the areas you intend to guide and or your employees have them. A lot of issues with individuals getting the tags, getting the clients, and not having permits for the areas in which they are going to be guiding. So been having a few issues with that, and or a client is really headstrong and wants to go hunt on their own and trying to use the guide outfitter tag program to just simply buy a tag, but that's not really how the program works. They're supposed to be accompanied in the field by the guide. So anyways, those are some issues that we've had with that. In my current position, I actually work as the Oregon State Police liaison for the TIP program, and within that TIP program are several partners like OHA, but also we have the Oregon Outfitters and Guides Association. So just looking at that today, we have submitted and received checks for 4 different individuals who have given us information on guides that have led to citations. So 4 already, and I know of probably a few more.
That's this year, right?
Sorry, that's 2024. Yes, so far, and I know of a few more that are in the works. We've got multiple open cases, and like I said, we contract with one position, and it's been pretty much all we can handle for the last 4 months. So. I know we've been getting a lot of inquiries about Eric Swanson. We did a press release on that. A lot of guides have been asking about that case and why is he still guiding and all this. So it did get adjudicated through the court system, and he's currently in administrative hearings come September, and that will decide the outcome of the suspension or not. So just want to give a real brief update on that, because I know that's been a topic of concern for some people. So I think that's all I have, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer a couple.
I got a question. You said guides turn each other in for stealing each other's clients. Is that really a thing?
Yeah, we've had that happen in the past, either meeting with the docs and trying to take them out from under. We've competing websites that look very similar to a guide of pre-existing guide, but the website looks a little different. There's been a...
Is that against the law?
Yes.
It gets,
wow, I didn't know.
It's pretty gray in some of those instances, but some of it's just ethics and finding out if some of it's true or not. And you guys are held to a higher ethics standard as being guides. And
well, that's embarrassing. I just say that.
Yeah, we do see it as well in the hunting area where people may have signed a contract, but other guides still try and contact the client and try and woo them away from the guide that they have agreed to be with. So it's really very competitive, especially in the hunting area with the tag prices of the tags and hunts. So it's not too fun.
I should say, Grant, some of it's not unlawful, but just in general, just finding out if some of the ethics complaints are true or not, and some of them have other insinuating factors to them that we have to investigate. But we aren't just going out investigating all of those, just so you know. But some of them we do.
And if it's ethics, I wouldn't think it's even worth your time. If it's unlawful, then you should be all over it. But I'm embarrassed you have to waste your time on stuff like that. But
Well, we work
I guess
with
it is what it is.
we work with OSP on the complaints. We have a formal process where when a complaint comes in, we determine whether or not it's criminal, something that is, against the law, can be citationable, and we send those straight to OSP. And then if it's not criminal, then we usually handle it inside unless I need some additional information, some background from OSP that helps us out. But typically we ask for, we receive the complaint, we ask for the guide to respond to the complaint with their point of view. And then Brian and I sit down with a matrix schedule of how we typically have handled these in the past, rate them as far as on the matrix, as far as mitigating and factors that increase the what would be the penalty. So can be a long drawn out process, but we feel that it's fair, and we treat all of the non-criminal complaints the same through our office.
Got it. Thanks for clarification.
Yeah. All right. Well, does anybody else have any questions for Clint? Awesome. Thank you, Clint. Appreciate you being here. And hopefully we'll get you back. I asked him today, he's like, okay, how long are you going to be on this temporary assignment? And we don't know. Old business. We had a presentation with the board at their last meeting, discussion that we started in the last meeting, for our last meeting. So the last board meeting as well as our last GAC meeting regarding fee restructuring. And Brian had a nice presentation for the board that he'd like to pretty much share the same presentation a little more clarified for all of you in case you have questions.
All right, can you hear me, Cyndi?
Yes, I can.
And not to point out, but we did skip the illegal guiding signage on the agenda.
We'll go back.
We can go back to that. Just wanted to give everybody a quick update and review on the outfitter guide fee restructure legislative concept. So back in May, I presented to the Guide Advisory Committee information and what we had in the works at that time. Since then, we've been extremely busy building budget around it, gathering more information, working with legislative council, those type of things. But I just wanted to go back and do a little bit of review and then get everybody up to speed to where we're at in the process.
Brian, you muted yourself, I think. You're still muted.
Is that better, Cyndi?
There you go. Yep, thank you.
Yeah, my screen's doing something unique, but I'll get through this. So the problems we're trying to solve with this legislative concept is the outfitter guide program expenditures continue to exceed revenues. For the last couple of biennium, the revenues that the outfitter guide program brings in doesn't meet the expenditures, and that's with running a fairly lean program with 2 staff members, and then our contract for one individual at OSP for the SIU. Fee changes, whether it be increases, restructuring, those type of things, they require a statute change. So that takes legislation. And going back to what we discussed in May, our current non-resident outfitter guide fee structure doesn't align with interstate commerce laws, which this has blocked a lot of outfitter guide statute changes that we've tried to make in the past to make improvements to the outfitter guide program. And really the best way that I can describe this is the state is prohibited from preferentially charging less to its own residents in the pursuit of a common occupation, such as an outfitter guide, to the detriment of non-resident competitors. And so there's other states that have similar structures, but overall, this is something that definitely violates interstate commerce laws. And going back to what our current structure is around reciprocity of non-resident fees, a lot of you, especially in the fishing guide industry, are aware that if an Oregon resident was to go to Washington, the fees are significantly greater, in which we charge Washington residents a greater fee in Oregon. So essentially, we charge non-residents what it would cost an Oregon resident to go to their state to guide in the same type of activity. So it's that reciprocity piece, which is defined in statute. And then really what has caused the biggest challenge with making any kind of fee changes, especially fee changes where we got to address the interstate commerce laws, is that the non-residents or the number of guides that pay more than $150 is a fairly low percentage, right around 6.9, 6.8%, and that's been consistent the last 3 years. So approximately 100 guides pay more than $150, and that makes up 44% of the outfitter guide budget, and that income, not the budget, but the income, the revenues. And so because there's such a budget majority on that small population of guides, by going to a system where we have to treat every resident, non-resident guide the same based on that fee, it really causes us to have to raise the fee higher to that larger portion, because that smaller portion makes up such a large amount of revenues. And really the solutions that we talked about last time to that interstate commerce barrier is that Oregon resident and non-resident outfitter guide registrations, the fees would need to be adjusted to be the same amount. We've done a lot of schematics, and I'll really show you kind of what it looks like, but we'd have to add a fee for the outfitter and guide employees, which currently is $0, but it takes considerable amount of time for us to process those. We have the non-resident hunt tag program, fee increases, and adding a per unit certification fee. Currently, there's 0 fees on the unit certification, which it does take considerable time to do that certification. The resident registration fee, would need to be increased significantly to offset that revenue gap that reciprocity has created. So previous outfitter guide legislative concepts have been basically blocked because this interstate commerce law misalignment. And just that the guide advisor committees worked on a lot of these legislative concepts in the past, such as in 2023, there was a deckhand or crew member designation. That was a legislative concept that got blocked by Ledge Council. We have the charter boat operated by an outfitter guide, that concept that got blocked. We have the hunting guide surety bond requirements to $10,000, that was blocked. We have the motorboat definition regarding the motor and use, that was a 2023 that was blocked. We actually had a legislative concept built in around the GAC membership, because currently it's all about associations, and it would get a more inclusive pool for the GAC membership, that was blocked. Our TIP program participation in 2023, that legislative concept was blocked. And other ones in the past has been like proof of worker compensation for employees, arrested and cited, and the background disclosures for non-res or out-of-state convictions and felonies. So there's been a lot of really great work that we wanted to do to improve the outfitter guide program that we can't do because of the current fee structure. And
Brian, just for a second, just back on that one, I just want to validate that, the GAC membership and the TIP program participation through some maybe some creative legislative interpretation or statutory interpretation, we have incorporated those things, but we'd like them to be more clearly defined in statute of our ability to do that, being straightforward and transparent. So just a little clarification for that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Cyndi, but the mechanism that we're participating is through the Oregon Outfitter Guide Association.
Correct.
Yeah. And so there's been a lot of really great work that's been done to improve the outfitter guide program, whether it be compliance, whether it be to the overall clients out there of outfitter guides, make things more inclusive, and we've not been able to fulfill that. So we sent out a survey, and thank you to the individuals that completed that. I think we had 10, I think it was 10 individuals that completed it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cyndi, but I think it was 10 out of 12. And so I just wanted to go over that feedback kind of on that 10,000 foot level. So the first question was, do you support the proposed outfitter guide fee restructuring where all resident, non-resident registered guides would pay $350 annually? You had the opportunity to say yes, no, and please explain. We had 82% yes. And just so everybody kind of understands, when we started looking at this legislative concept, we initially, looking at what we needed to for target revenues versus the operating at the current service level, it was initially closer to that $500 a year mark, but we were able to refine things down based on adding an employee fee, adding, that those things that we're doing and processing that take time and money that we aren't getting compensated for. Essentially, that's part of a mandatory program. The other question, the second question we asked is, would you support a separate fee for employees who are not required to be individually registered? So currently there's no fee, but requires measurable processing. That's something we've talked about. The one thing that was interesting is I think folks got this question a little bit confusing with the next question, in that currently in statute, if you are providing angling services, even though you're not operating the boat, so maybe like a deckhand that's providing angling services, you have to be registered as an outfitter guide, and I think folks are getting confused on that. But this was intended to ask if would you support a separate fee for employees who are not required to be individually registered but are providing guiding service, whether that's rafting guides, horseback riding guides, those type of things. And 63% said yes. The next question was more intended for that fishing related, in that it says currently all fishing guide employees must be individually registered as an outfitter guide, paying the same fee as the employer. Should that remain the same? And 18% said yes. Just to kind of reiterate, in 2023, that was one of our legislative concepts, was to get that deckhand or crew member designation to alleviate those individuals that are aiding in angling service but not operating the boat, to be able to do that without doing the full outfitter guide registration. Fourth question was, should we require an other guided service to have their employees individually registered as outfitter guide, yes or no? Or should we require any other guided services to have their employees individually registered? So that question was intended if I was a hunting guide, an outfitter guide, and I had 10 employees, would it require me to have every single one of my employees at that full outfitter guide registration, not that employee designation? Which 25% said yes. And then furthermore, on a scale to 1 to 10, how supportive of restructuring outfitter guide fees are you? And then 85% said yes, and 8.5 was the average response. And really, this is kind of the real, I guess, nuts and bolts to everything. And so this is how we've really put things together on the fee restructure. And this is kind of a preliminary detail report. And I don't necessarily want to go line item by line item unless people want to, but what it does is it shows the fee and description of it. So you'll see that top one, and it might be small on some of your screens, and I apologize, but we did email it ahead of time. So the outfitter and guide annual registration resident, it describes who pays the fee. It shows what the fee change would be. So on this preliminary detail report, the fee would increase. It shows the date of the last change. So it's been over a decade since that fee has changed. There's not a whole lot of things in the world nowadays that has not increased since, the last decade. So it's been a while since we've had a fee change. The amount of the last change was $100. So that current fee is $150. With the proposed fee of $350. So then it shows the amount of the proposed fee, which is $200. It shows what the total revenue is forecasted for our current biennium, so that's what we're in right now, at 417,750. It shows what the projected transactions would be with that new fee. So that's if we change it that everybody goes to the same or the residents, it shows what that would be. So then it shows the overall impact and then the total revenue. And that goes line item by line item. So you can see the outfitter and guide annual registration for non-residents from a state that charges a fee. We have to adjust that annually. So if California raises their fee to Oregon residents, a guy there at California or Washington, or excuse me, Idaho, we adjust that. So that does vary. But you can see each line item there, it shows whether the fee is an increase, a decrease, or established. For example, the outfitter and guide employee registration fee. Currently, there is no fee for that, even though we're processing them. That'd be establishing a fee of $25, which the projected number of transactions for 2025 to 27 is 440. So this is really the work we've been doing to refine what we can do to make it fair across the board and still be able to fund the program, which is a program that's very important to the state and very important to the outfitter and guide industry, and really kind of the next steps, and just to kind of keep everybody informed, the legislative concept, it's been assigned a number. It's been conditionally approved by the governor's office and the CFO. It is currently being drafted by our legislative council. Our Marine board voted in favor of supporting the legislative concept during our July quarterly board meeting, which means that the board's directed our agency staff to continue moving forward with outfitter guide fee restructure, which is considered a policy option package. So for now it's in our what we call our agency request budget. It'll go to the governor's office and be part of hopefully the governor's request budget, and then goes into the legislation and potentially part of the legislatively adopted budget. So this concept really allows the agency to, one, restructure fees, find that solution for that interstate commerce. It allows us to maintain our current service levels, whether it be at our agency, but also our enforcement contract, and truly allows opportunity for doing good work for future legislative concepts. I would, offer up to answer any questions. I can tell you that we've done a lot of work on this. We've really fine-tuned a lot of the numbers, and really hope that a lot of folks realize this really opens the door for us to do a lot of good work in the future on changing things and helping the program. I would offer it up now to questions, unless Cyndi, you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm good. Anybody have any additional questions?
Hey, I'm online here, Cyndi. I got a question. This is Bill Moore Jr.
Hi, Bill. Go ahead.
Well, it's more of a comment to start. I think this is a great move because you know that Washington usually has to match Oregon. So I think that eventually, if Washington sees this, that they're just going to have to fall in line with these exuberant, crazy fees that Washington has been going. I've been a staunch advocate of the guides on the Washington shoreline and the lack of their ability to make an income, whether it's below Longview Bridge or not, and then the fee structures. So this is a step in the right direction. I do have one concern though. ODFW is coming with they need a fee increase as well. They haven't had one in even longer. ODFW has. It's been almost 15, actually like 17 years. For a fee increase on licenses, and fishing and hunting in the state of Oregon are precious to all of us. So maybe I was thinking the concept being the 350, maybe it could come down to an even 300 just to be able to kind of make it a little bit easier on it. Is that even like a possibility if we look at the actual amounts? I'm in full support of the actual concept. I like it a lot, but what about an adjustment on the amount if we're going to get fee increases from both agencies? I'll take those answers offline.
Yeah, I can answer that. To be clear, we started off at 500, and we've had to really refine it down to get to the 350, and that's been looking at establishing fees on areas of service we're providing and not having any kind of revenue to match what it cost us to do business. And so, to be candid, 350 is truly the lowest we can go and model out 6 years of operation.
Yeah. Okay. No, 100%. That makes sense.
And Brian mentioned just briefly right there, it's, the idea is to make it be sustainable for over at least 6 years so that we don't have to readjust it, any sooner than that. And hopefully we could make it go a little further, but it's certainly well thought out, and we understand that it's a big number, but we're trying to make it as lean as possible.
And the biggest challenge is the fact that 7% of the guiding population was providing 44% of the revenues. That's what really made the biggest impact on the jumping in the fee, is that's a lot of ground to make up.
Yeah. Right, does anybody else have any comments?
I'd like to make a couple comments, Cindy. Jason Schultz.
Jason. Yes.
So Brian, I like everything about your proposal here. This thing's awesome. It's going to save us a bunch of money being the non-resident guides in the room here. My question for you is about the deckhand fee of $25. One of the coolest things about what you're doing is you're simplifying the whole system, which I love. And I would just suggest, instead of trying to license deckhands individually, why don't we just charge each boat or each guide a fee to license them to to be licensed to conduct business with a deckhand? Or is there some reason you wouldn't want to do that?
So just to clarify your question, if I was a guide and I was going to have a deckhand on my boat, I would just register my boat or my business as having a deckhand. I think the piece there, and Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong, is we'd have to make sure that deckhand had, first aid, CPR, was on the insurance, those kind of things. So there's processing of that individual, especially if they're helping provide services, to the public, that we want to make sure that they're, falling under that regulation. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy.
Yeah, Jason's got some point there that initially when we first suggested the crew member or deckhand designation, that was when there was no employee fee proposed. So that legislative concept that went forward a few years ago, that was in response to the outfitter guide or the deckhand having to be individually registered as an outfitter guide. They were the only employees that were charged anything. So that was an incentive to encourage people coming into the fishing business as, children, or even using, fathers and father-in-laws and uncles as deckhands, and making it more affordable, encouraging them to be in the business with a more palatable fee. We would probably have to, reconsider this. The crew member deckhand designation is not part of this legislative package. An employee fee is. So we'd have to probably re-look at it to see whether or not that does cover the deckhand situation, and we maybe wouldn't need that in a legislative concept going forward in the future years.
Okay, so to clarify that, the $25 fee in this legislation does not cover the deckhand?
No, it would just be employees. So it would be all employees.
Okay, so the deckhand at this point is still going to have an Oregon guide registration?
Currently, you're right. The current concept does not repeal that requirement for the fishing guides employees to be individually registered.
Okay.
And just to clarify, the the reason being is we can't even touch this statute unless we fix the fee structure.
Copy.
Yeah.
This is step one. Yeah.
My question is, will this $25 per staff member cover the processing costs that are associated with it? Is it
certainly
enough?
helps.
Yeah, yeah, I would think it would help, but is it enough? And I mean, how many, Brian, did I see a number in there? You've got, or do you have a projection on how many staff that would, entail?
So we don't have it, so I have 2 staff members that work in the Outfitter Guide program. And so when we look at the overall, the grand scheme of the budget, we look at the transactional level. And so we looked at it, and you can kind of see the numbers, the total revenues based on what our current biennium is. You can see the projected transactions with the proposed new fee. You can see where the impact on the budget, obviously you can see a huge impact on the line item 2, which is going to be made up in line item 1 because it all becomes the same fee. And so the way our budgeting people work, we understand what that process takes. Putting a numerical value on one transaction, though we can average it out and figure that out, the grand scheme of how the budget works is a little bit different than how you would do it in the private sector. It's probably the best way to describe it, but overall, we are looking at this at the transactional level.
And this is the fee that renews every year, like the guide's licenses, is that right?
Yeah, so say if I was an employee of an Outfitter Guide that was a rafting guide, I would have a $25 fee every year to be a guide, be an employee of an Outfitter Guide rafting company.
Okay.
That's just an example.
And Jeff, quite honestly, our system has not been very friendly as far as actually gaining the numbers of employees that are not individually registered as guides. It's very simple to get the ones that like the fishing guides that have to be registered. But I did just, I've been working with our software folks, and I just got a report that's going to help me pull out all those employees out of our system because they're not credentialed. They're not given a specific identifier to say this is an employee. And that's one of the things that we would be changing if this proposal passed, this concept passed. But so I'm trying to get a handle on this before we get there. So yeah, we will have a number.
It just seems like a daunting task if all 1,500 outfitters rolled up with 1 or 2 staff members. That's a lot of certification, a lot of processing. That's all. I'm just running some numbers. Yeah.
It's actually no more than what we'd be doing currently.
Cindy, we're already processing them. This is actually having a fee for something we're already doing.
Right.
So basically, you're tracking it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Cindy, it's Jeff Keatley. Hey, I just have to make the comment. I happen to have a deckhand full time, 7 years, same deckhand, and $350 for that employee, to use the word, is a lot different than 25. And I'll just leave it at that. I'm sure you know where I'm headed with this.
And just to clarify, Jeff, our intent is to fulfill that 2023 legislative concept that was with the deckhand and crew member designation. It would go to the 25, but unfortunately, we can't tackle that until this fee structure is taken care of. But the intent, just and Cindy and I've talked about this, is to get that through as soon as possible.
I understand. So that makes me a little bit confused. We are talking about several other changes that involve legislature, but not that one.
So that's very specific, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy, in 704.01 or 704.010 in definitions, it says an employee of an outfitter guide, unless the employee conducts, leads, or assists in angling activities or operates or assists an operator. Essentially, we'd have to strike out that definition, which is something we will be working on, but at the same time, we have to tackle this fee before legislative council will even allow us to touch this. Does that
So
make
it's
sense?
essentially, Jeff, we can't package a ton of things into this one legislative concept because we don't want the fee change. You know, if anybody had any arguments with any of the other concepts that we had within it, then they would kill the whole bill. So what we're really trying to do is get the fee change. That is the most important item we can tackle, and that what we have to do in order to be able to make any further changes. So we feel that this is palatable, that it would, you know, hopefully be passed easily. And then that would open the door for us to create the legislative concepts that we are really desperately wanting, but we just don't feel it's politically savvy to package them all together.
And I guess I would add, Jeff, that if this, and you got to realize we're in very preliminary stages of this. We've got a long road ahead of us, a long road. When this gets to a committee and somebody, you know, or those type of things, this is one of the very first things that I will be happy to talk to them about, because I fully understand what you're talking about with a deckhand and that type of thing. So just know that this isn't something that's being overlooked.
So can I ask a question on that one?
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
So can a deckhand be an employee and then only have to pay the $25?
They could if we have a statute amended, and that's because it's in 704.
The definition.
Yeah. And
okay.
So we'd have to have that strike through, and I'm not sure we can get that in the initial draft. That might be something that comes out in an amendment, which I think if you get the right group behind things, I think that's something that could probably get done in an amendment. That's talking further down the road, obviously.
Be a -10.
Yes. Yeah. But yes, this is something that's on my mind because I understand the importance of it to the fishing guide community.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that 150 is hardly palatable to any deckhand to pay, and that 350 would be extremely unpalatable, but that's not our intent to keep it that way.
And there's some strategy if this goes further and gets to the point where it's in legislation. I think there's some strategy there to have that in an amendment. But I think initially, you know, and where we're at now, that's something that can't be put into that until we get to that point. But I'm happy to work with anybody, you know, on talking points on that, you know, that wants to talk about it.
Jason, go ahead.
As it relates to rafting outfitters, what constitutes an employee versus a guide?
Currently, it would be, if they're fishing, they'd be a guide until that's changed. And then, you know, the rafting groups, there is one primary outfitter guide, and then everybody else is an employee unless they're fishing. So that would remain the same.
So they can come in the river in 10 boats with 50 people and have one guide.
Well, one registered guide currently, but if with this change, it would be one registered outfitter guide and then $25 per employee that's on that trip.
So an employee is defined as an individual who, in exchange for compensation or monetary gain, provides outfitting and guiding services under the direction, supervision, and control of an outfitter guide or a charter guide. So I'm an outfitter guide. I have a rafting company. I hire Cyndi to be my employee. She's providing guiding services under my supervision. So she would have to be registered as an employee under my business.
So I've been in the outfitting game in Hell's Canyon for nearly 30 years. Back in the old days, that's the way we did it with the jet boats. There was business was basically licensed, and then all the other employees just ran under that Oregon guide registration. And then somewhere along the line it got changed, and now all my employees have to be individually guides, even though they work for me. They have to be individual guides. So why would that work for rafting companies and not a jet boat company like myself?
Well, that's when, and I'm sorry, I don't know the exact date, but that's when that definition of adding fishing guides, employees needing to be individually registered. And honestly, I don't have the history on that.
So if the rafting company takes people fishing, then those people have to be guides? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
It's just weird to me, like if they put an anchovy on a hook and net a salmon, that they're 350, and if they row a drift boat with, I don't know, fruit in it, they're 25. It just seems strange.
So, in the whole guiding industry, all the outfitter guides that we have, all the services, all the employees, except fishing guides, just need to be registered with us. Currently, there's no charge. Fishing guide employees are the only ones that have had to be registered for at least the last 10 years. So we're trying to make it a little more equitable and say fishing deckhands, those that are not alone in the boats, they're operating with a certified outfitter guide. They can be now listed as a crew member or employee. And then to make it more equitable, as well as the water, whitewater rafting, hunting, all of those pay the same $25 per fee. So it's an attempt to make it, more palatable for fishing guides and more equitable across the board as far as how you treat employees.
I don't see how someone with the responsibility of netting fish and cleaning the boat should be responsible for paying $350. Someone can put customers and come down on a 5-day float trip, and just because they don't wet a line, they pay $25. That doesn't seem equitable.
Well, like we said, Jason, it's not our intent for the deckhands to pay $350. If we can get that through for them to be considered crew members or employees within this, with some maneuvering within this legislative concept, that's when we'll do it. If it can't be included in that, that will be the first legislative package we put together after the fee structures is corrected.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
We fully understand the discontent on it and the semantics, and I'm assuming that happened in 2013 based on what I can see on citations on this definition, but I don't have the history on why that was created.
Okay.
This is Jeff Miller. Is it possible that we could have a new fee structure foisted onto us if we don't change it now?
Yes.
Because if you guys are going to start to run it in the, on the downside of plus, I can see where the legislature would make a move to change this, and we might not have a lot of input at that point.
And the other piece is if there was some type of litigation, then that caused the change, then we might not have as much input.
Yeah, I think we all are in agreement that it's better to put forth a concept than rather have it put forth upon us.
Yeah, get out in front of that curveball. Yeah.
I think all in all, this is all a great change. I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be good. It's going to simplify things, and if we can get this through and then maybe work on the deckhand thing next session, that'd be super.
Absolutely. Awesome. Anybody else? Any comments? I
had a question for
go ahead.
Guides.
Yeah.
And their members. How do you determine how many members they have? Currently, you're not charging, right? But $5.
Right. There's no fee for them, but they are required to register with us, their employees. So that's becomes a concern as far as enforcement. They're checking them on the water. employee has to be on their employee list with us if they're checked. So it's
Yeah,
in
we have a
statute.
number of, run 5 or 6 or 8 boats, and they'll have probably a dozen employees, but only 8 on the river at a time or so. Would they have to license all 12 of those employees?
If they're on the water providing services, yes. It's not like interchangeable. They have to have their current first aid CPR certification. They have a background check done on them when we register them as their employees. So, yeah, it's required. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. Did anybody join after the start of the meeting and I've missed you?
One of the comments, this is Cyndi, this is Cody. Can you hear me?
Hi, Cody. No, I didn't get you earlier, so thank you for speaking up.
So one of the things where you have guides listed and we're dealing with public, it's pretty important to be able to have first aid CPR training with everybody that's out there in the field and background check, everything else. It's an ass covering world, so you want to make sure everybody is qualified to handle any kind of a bad situation that could come up. I think that's one of the reasons why everybody has to go through all this. Having dealt with somebody that actually died in the field, it's a pretty nice thing to fall back on some first aid CPR training. So
yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Cody. We if there's one thing I could do, it'd be to increase the requirements for first aid CPR. It's very frustrating for me every renewal period to explain why we don't take an online CPR certification, and that, practice hopefully makes it not perfect, but better than every 2 years. It's not too much to ask. So
yeah, the lady that does it for us, it's more geared towards the hunting end, out in the field where you don't have access to cell phones. You're a ways from the rig. If something happened, gunshot wounds, broken legs, heart attack, so on and so forth, so that you're prepared. Yeah, and you're trying to help somebody with the materials you have. If you're on a boat, it could be something simple as break a fishing rod and splice up a broken leg or something along those lines. Or in the field, find a lasso rope or mule tape or something like that. Even a sandwich bag over a gunshot wound or a stab wound on a sucking chest wound. Those sort of things. I think there's some of the, I don't know, is it different courses that they could do? Would all be great to up that ante a little.
yep, wilderness responder, wilderness first aid, those are all great. So
that's right.
Okay, I'm going to circle back just to let you know that we've resurrected. I included in your packets, we resurrected a sign that we had a few years ago. We've updated the information so that phone calls will go to the tip line instead of to our office. But essentially, we want to post these in places that are, very popular with guides. So put in or take out areas, boat launches. If you have any suggestions for us places we may overlook that you think could benefit from someone being told that they'll be reported, we would appreciate that. So just send me an email with that information of where we could do it, because our troops will be out shortly putting more signs up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Cyndi, is that going to have a social media presence too?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes, we'll be putting it on our sites. 100%. Yeah. Thank you, Bill. Yeah. Cool. All right, on to new business. Brian and I and our policy manager, Alan Hansen, got to meet with ODFW. I guess, what was it, 6 weeks ago or so now, Brian?
It was the first week of June, Cyndi. We met with approximately 30 ODFW staff and 3 Marine Board staff. And I'll let you go ahead, Cyndi, and then I'll add my piece.
Okay, well, I was just going to go over, like Brian said, we were a little overwhelmed with well, let me just say first that ODFW invited us to be together. We have asked for some, some one-on-one time with them. And I think we've finally got through. Brian's persistence is awesome. And so we were thrilled with the participation from ODFW. I put together this one pager, well, two-sided pager that's included in your packet to help them inform. Now, they were really interested in the fact that they get complaints about overcrowding, too many guides. Guides are taking too much of the resources, and things that we hear over and over and over again. And so Brian and I were both trying to emphasize the facts as we see them, and you'll see kind of in the bolded text that things have remained relatively stable in the fishing guide industry. And this is all about fishing guides. That's what ODFW is concerned about at this meeting anyway. Fishing services remain about 81% of our total population of guide. We've seen about 9% to 10% growth over the last 10 years. And the number of guides has been increased about 10%. The number of boats has actually increased quite a bit more. What we're seeing is, instead of the traditional guide with one sled, or that they cannot concentrate on one type of guiding, they're now they have a raft, they have a drift boat, they might have a motorized drift boat, and then they might have an ocean sled. So we're seeing more guide boats that are decaled. New guides have remained pretty much consistent in the last 6 years. At about every year we get about 11% are brand new guides for the year, but their longevity is not. They typically don't last. Well, about 20% of the new guides don't register again the next year. So there's immediate fallout. And then if you take away our core group of fishing guides, about 500 that have been registered for 10 or more years, if you take those out of the pot, then the average tenure for a fishing guide is about 4 years. So they're interesting things for to counteract the idea that it's all the fault of too many guides being out there. Guides are more guides are more nomadic. Social media has increased the visibility of the hot spots in the areas, and people flock to where the fishing is hot. So that was my little one piece. Brian was going to go over the ODFW's Columbia River Buoy 10 case study.
Yeah, thanks, Cyndi. So there's a lot of, we feel a lot of complaints that are fishing guide centric, and a lot of it is about the resources. And I mean, quite honestly, I came into work Monday this week and had a whole bunch of Rogue River California guide complaints. So it doesn't matter if it's the Rogue River, Buoy 10, the North Coast, the Slets. Like I receive a lot of complaints about the overcrowding. When we went to ODFW, we provided the 2-pager to inform them, one, what the fishing guide population truly looks like based on our data, and to make sure that, one, we can collectively see where the guiding is, but is it something that it's a dissatisfaction of opportunity by people that aren't guides? Is it dissatisfaction about fishing seasons are shorter? Truly, what are they trying to achieve, or what we're trying to answer? And so one thing that ODFW did present to us, they had a Buoy 10 case study where they looked at, and actually they've looked at this over the last decade, the total angler trips for guided anglers versus the percent of total Chinook that are kept. And there's been an increasing number of Chinook kept over the fact that the percent of total angler trips attributed to guides has increased also. So there's a whole lot of fishing opportunity that's being fulfilled by guides, and essentially there's some dissatisfaction with the non-guided community, and maybe they're the folks that fish only on the weekends. So I guess really the takeaways from that conversation with ODFW is, one, I challenged, quite honestly, them to identify maybe areas that they could get a little bit better data. They're collecting data in the ports, you know, for fish. We'll just call them fish checkers for that matter. Maybe they can collect guide data at the same time and be able to bring that back to us. So we're going to keep having conversations with ODFW. One thing that they did discuss with us is there's a lot of challenges with guides and rockfish identification. And so they asked us to consider looking at some kind of requirement for ocean guides on rockfish having a requirement for identification. So overall, I think it was a good meeting, and we're going to continue conversations with them. But really, for me, we have a good grasp on our data. I challenged, you know, some of their staff to get a good grasp on their data so that, and then really truly define what they're trying to accomplish. Because a lot of the complaints, if you really look at it, when you have fishing seasons that are, say, a month long of opportunity, we don't get as many complaints. But when you have these compressed fishing seasons where you increase the number of boats on the water, maybe you increase the amount of time people got to take off, those kind of things, and that's when we start getting more complaints. So we look at it from a safety standpoint also, but this is a conversation that will continue.
Ryan, this is Jeff Miller. I'm just curious, how, compared to 10 years ago, how many more boats are registered in the state of Oregon than there were then? Because that to me is part of the you know, I go up and down the gorge all the time, and it's like, I don't have time to stop and count the boats, but in all the likely suspect areas, you know, there's just piles of boats. And there's got to be more boats registered in the state, and that's part of this activity issue or this crowding issue.
Yeah, so I'm actually pretty in tune to that because the amount of federal funding we get is tied specifically to the number of currently registered boats in the state. And the number of currently registered boats in the state has continued to decrease year after year for over a decade, significantly. And so we're right around 156,000 currently registered boats in the state. It is significantly less than what we were a decade ago.
So the boats that are here are using the resources and the water, it sounds like, more so in the past.
Well, like I said, you know, instead of the guide having one boat going for one specific type of fishing, they're getting more varied, going more areas.
And
well, I wasn't thinking so much about the fishing guys as the general public, you know, because they're just, they've crowded the river. I mean, it's anywhere you go up and down the Columbia, if there's a season, it's just incredible how many big boats are out there. Having lived in the gorge for 30 years, 40 years, a lot more than there ever was. So obviously those boats are on the river, even though there's less boats registered. That was what I was wondering about, and you answered it. Thank you.
Yeah, Jeff, and I think, and I know there's a lot of people in the industry that are a lot smarter than me and a lot more in tune to this stuff, but the one thing, you know, I grew up, I'm a native Oregonian, North Coast fisherman. A lot of the fishing guides 10, 15, 20 years ago, they guided on their home waters, and maybe they guided, you know, 3, 4 different places, and that's it. And they guided from their house every day. Where now fishing seasons are compressed. Maybe they're only open a certain amount of time. So you see a lot of fishing guides that are more nomadic, right? Like they're getting Airbnb for a couple of weeks. They're taking their RV, getting a campground where 10, 15, 20 years ago, that maybe wasn't as common. Now, like I said, there's other people that are more in tune to that than I am, but the dynamic of fishing guides has changed over the last decade, and a lot of it's chasing the fish and the business.
And that could be said for the recreational fishermen as well as the guide.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else want to comment on this topic? I have to say it was actually go ahead, who has a comment?
I had a question just because I'm not real familiar with the fishing industry, but on the water where it's all open water, public water, is there places where guides aren't allowed to be, or is it pretty much open to anybody?
Guides are considered recreational fishermen as well as their clients. So wherever. Yeah.
Whereas, you know, hunting, you got private land So the general public can't get in, house a lot of animals, or say wilderness areas where it's heavily permitted with only a few people. So in the water, it's everybody's out and can access any point of the water, just whether they have to get up and go to. So what are they trying to say, that the guides are fishing all the spots and there's nothing left for the public? Is that kind of the general consensus?
Well, Cody, I do have to change my answer a little bit. So there are federally permitted waterways, like the Rogue, the Chetco, there are places where they do have to be permitted because they are taking passengers for hire or conducting commercial businesses.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to just move on. I just wanted to let you guys know that our office has been asked by ODFW to comment and work with them as far as they've changed the designation for the southern resident orcas, and it is now a state federally endangered species, and there's 74 of them. I'll read this real quick. The ODFW Commission listed the southern resident orcas on the state's endangered list. Resident orcas use Oregon as a travel corridors. They move between southern and northern feeding areas. There are 3 different types of orcas, which I didn't know: resident, transient, and offshore. So these are the resident ones that are being considered endangered. They're primarily endangered through noise pollution, environmental pollution, and I lost the third one. But there are going to be discussions regarding if the Marine Board should make any changes to how requiring boaters to do anything different. And there may possibly be changes within the next few years as far as when the discussions continue. I will share this just brief synopsis of what the orca situation is. And so if you have any questions about them, you can share the information. But it's just a quick couple of paragraphs. So I'll email that out to you. I just got that today. So I didn't get it to you yesterday. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to zip to then. Jeff Keatley brought up a good subject that I just wanted to have just kind of a general discussion on initially regarding outfitter guides working as booking agents. And Jeff, maybe you can give us just a brief overlook of the big issue as you see it.
Yeah, hi, thanks. So I've had several customers in the last couple of years come fishing with me that had previously gone out with what they thought was an extremely similar company with a similar business model, where the guide is selling trips, and by all indications you're fishing with that particular guide, when in reality he runs very few of his own trips, and in fact books guides that I've never heard of, which is kind of alarming because I know a lot of fishing guides, to operate here in Astoria, and with what I would call substandard, I don't know. Whether or not they're good fishing guides, I guess that's not even the point. The point is, it's a bait and switch the way I see it. The people are expecting to fish with a particular guide, and by all indications on his website and all social media, that's what you get. However, that guide has listings all up and down the coast and all up and down the river and in Portland and everywhere in the state, and doesn't in fact run a significant portion of the trips that he's booking and selling. And in my opinion, it's a disservice to the clients, the public, and a blight on us as a guide community, and unethical, in my opinion. When I read the ethics thing, that's clearly not what I think an ethical guide would do and should do. And if there's any way we can address it, I think it should be done.
Thanks, Steph. I really think this is something that could be easily applied across all guiding services in the state. I mean, anytime, I mean, the situation could happen with any guide that books separately trips for other guides under their, you know, the guise of their own business. So I just wanted to get a general feel of, you know, is this a problem? Have you seen this? Do we need to figure out if there's any possibility of, or a general policy that we want to put forth going forward? Just your general comments are appreciated.
So Cyndi, just to make sure everybody understands, in Oregon administrative rules, there's outfitter and guide ethical and professional standards, and I think G is kind of pretty close to this type of activity, in which it says not engage in fraud, deceit, misrepresentation, or concealment of any material fact in advertising, soliciting, or providing professional services to members of the public. So I would say this is probably something that would fall near there.
Yes, and I agree, Brian. And there's also a statute under the revocation of registration where we may suspend or deny for, so before F, engaging in fraudulent, untruthful, or seriously misleading advertising in the conduct of outfitting and guiding services. So I guess I'm wondering if this is a problem maybe outside the fishing world as well, or if it is a problem, does it rise to the level of, you know, that definition, fraudulent, untruthful, or misleading advertising?
Just one more thing, this is Jeff Keatley. So I've had 2 customers in the last month with the same, that came fishing with me, that had used this particular booking service / guide service. And in both cases, and I can give you their names and numbers, I'm sure they'd be happy to explain to you what happened, but in both cases, they show up at the boat expecting the guide that they believe they booked with, and the guide that's running the trip goes, oh, he's not here today. Well, he's never there. Well, I shouldn't say never. He's rarely there. He's booking other boats under, you know, and the people have no idea that they're not fishing with the person that they believe they booked with until they get to the boat. So, you know, in the past, I used to book some of my buddies down here until that accident with VIP Outdoors, and I just stopped doing it because I decided I didn't like the idea of taking money out of my buddies' pockets and taking on their liability in any way, shape, or form that I can avoid. So you know, when people called me and I was booked full, I'd say, I'm sorry, you know, my boat's booked full, but I've got a buddy that I book trips for. And so at least they knew when they were signing up what they were getting into. And to me, that's ethical, but I've stopped doing it. And what this guy that I told you who it is doing is not ethical. It's a misrepresentation, clearly. And he does it all.
So it sounds like it's already considered unethical and against our policy. So you just need to have those people write into the Marine Board or call the Marine Board and have it handled.
Yeah, I think this is Brian. To Grant's point, I'd recommend we'll take this conversation for your specific situation, Jeff, offline, just because it does have the potential to have adverse actions or sanctions. So just because it's public meeting and the nature of the conversation, I'd recommend you can work with Cyndi and we'll get more information and follow our very specific policy and procedures we have on this type of thing.
And I'd appreciate input from anybody else as far as if they've run into similar situations. If it's just to identify if it's a larger problem across the state.
Cyndi, this is Jeff Miller. I'm almost positive there's a civil statute in the state of Oregon that you have to be a registered agent to sell quantities like this, and you've got to be bonded. You've got to have insurance. Travel agents have to have that, and that's essentially when you're selling trips like that. That's what that falls under. So I'm sure there's a civil statute about this because I haven't been involved in it, but I've been approached by people, and if they're not registered by the state of Oregon for doing this activity, then they're probably breaking the law. And that's somebody would have to research, but I'm sure there's a civil statute on this. You have to be a registered travel agent, basically.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, we will.
Cindy, this is Cody.
Oh, hi, Cody. Go ahead.
So with this, what they were talking about is basically essentially booking agents and selling fishing trips, selling hunting trips to I guess these are other registered outfitters in the state that we have registered and are operating. Right. And then they have become what the general public or the people booking the hunts aren't satisfied with other guides registered with us. Is that kind of the major complaint we're hearing about?
Well, I guess it's more the misrepresentation. I mean, yes, we have booking guides. We've dealt with booking guides for years, and they're not necessarily...
not booking guides. Is the people that are booking the hunts. They're right, putting those agents. People in touch with. Yeah, the booking agents are putting people in touch with other registered outfitters, and then those registered outfitters just aren't doing a good job. That's kind of what I understand the situation, and I have actually seen that over on our side in the hunting industry. What's happening now is, times are tough, and it sounds like there's kind of a flood of fishing guides on the river, so they're coming east and being hunting guides in the fall or in the spring, and we're getting a lot of complaints, and I get a lot of calls from, hey, this guy's no good, this guy's no good, but they're a registered outfitter with the state. Maybe we have such a problem with the guide community where we have too much quantity and not enough quality. That's kind of what I'm hearing a lot of. And yes, you do have a lot of these fly-by-night used car salesmen. There's tons of them that call us all the time.
Like I was saying, I don't think the booking agent is really the issue. It's more the outfitter guide purporting to run the service, but then not letting the client know that that's not, they're not actually providing the service. So
yeah, that it's somebody that nobody's ever heard of, one of these first year guides. And I'm guessing that the booking agent is taking a lion's share of the money because the brand new guide that no one's ever heard of that's actually running the trip is desperate to try to build his business.
Right. Jeff, we'll take this directly from, we'll reach out to that guide and let them know what we think about the service. So we'll take it unless we hear differently.
Well, you asked if this is a larger issue, and it's funny is because I know several people that are doing the same thing over on our neck of the woods, and there's a lot of dissatisfaction in the hunting community. And, to be honest, that puts a lot of extra burden on the guys that are tenured and are proven, which is good for business, but it's also, you can't take everybody.
Cody, can you email me specifics? That would be awesome.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think we have a general pulse of what we're needing to do. So, the last item on my agenda is just an informational. We're going to be at the Oregon Outdoor Recreational Summit. We're going to be doing a presentation at Sun River on December 5th through 7th. Just to let you know, we had to actually submit a topic, and they voted whether or not it was acceptable, which I love. So we're actually going to give a presentation on the changing dynamics of outfitter guides, kind of starting with a historical reference, where guides have come from, and changes in requirements, the public perspective, evolution of the services offered. We certainly see that continuing, and the increased importance of networking and social accountability, and future impacts of guides on resources and inclusivity. So Ryan and I will do our best dog and pony show. And so we hope that registration is open. I don't know if any of you, I know Megan has been to the Outdoor Recreation Summit. I've been a few years ago. Brian's been the last couple of years. It's a marvelous networking informational opportunity, and registration has been opened. So like I said, Sun River, first weekend in December. So hope to see you there. anything for good of the order? I've done enough talking today. What do you have to say? It's nice to see your smiling faces. I appreciate you all being here. Brian and I were talking about maybe the next meeting, the second week of December. I know it's a busy time, just family and social wise, but does anybody have any alternatives or opposition? If I send out a doodle poll with a couple different dates, does that sound okay?
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
Good.
Awesome. Okay. Hopefully we can give you some good updates on the legislative concept status at that point. Brian, when does the actual legislature meet next year?
It's late spring.
Okay.
I don't know the exact date. You put me on the spot, Cindy.
That's okay.
It's a long session here, not a short session. So
Right.
I don't know off the top of my head, but it'll be spring.
Okay.
Late spring.
That was as much as a time frame as I needed. So
Yeah.
all right.
If we have any updates in December, we'll definitely share them. Or if something's critical between now and then, I will definitely send out an email. And I won't forget the stuff we talked about on the deckhand and crew member stuff today.
Yes. All right. If nobody has anything extra, I thank you all for being here at this dinner time. Enjoyed seeing you, and don't hesitate to call or email. All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night.